On to the US for that breaking news. US President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump both testing positive to coronavirus. Joining me from Los Angeles is Peter Mathews, a professor of politics at Cyprus University. Peter, the president now is possibly seriously sick. What usually happens in this sort of a scenario?
There's one recourse, and that is if he's incapacitated. We don't know yet because we don't know what the tests are coming in. We don't know why it's been a while, why he has to wait for so long to find out what's going on. But if it's serious, then there is the 25th Amendment. Section 4 allows the vice president to get together with the majority of the cabinet. I think 2/3 of the cabinet has to agree, and then they vote to decide to give the vice president the presidency. But that's a very dangerous thing to do because in case he's okay, and he might see that as a power struggle, and it could destabilize a lot of things. But that's the normal procedure. If the president, for example, under President Kennedy, when President Kennedy was assassinated, and then in 1967, this 25th Amendment was adopted just to ensure that if someone was incapacitated in the presidency, there'd be a quick succession right to the vice presidency. But it requires invoking the 25th Amendment and then actually having Congress. 2/3 of Congress have to agree if the president disagrees. If the president goes along with it, the vice president becomes president. Otherwise, Congress has to vote 2/3 of majority to remove power from him. But we're not even close to that right now until we find out what is exactly going on with these virus tests.
Well, exactly.
And where is he at?
And we heard from Donald Trump's physician earlier. He said that, rest assured, I expect the president to continue carrying out his duties without disruption while recovering. How much can the president do while in isolation?
That's an excellent question. It's very unusual. It hasn't really happened before because isolation means you really don't get to talk closely to world leaders or diplomats, or you certainly can't go out and campaign, that's for sure. But as far as carrying out the duties, it's going to limit him somewhat because people have to get tested, and then he has to be, the quarantine is a quarantine. It's 14 days at least to be sure if he's comes out with a positive test. So it's going to really put a blanket on some of his work. If this is the case, if he's actually sick from it, it has to be quarantined this way. It'll slow things down a bit.
And how exactly might President Trump and Melania be quarantined? Can they actually lock down the White House?
That is so, again, it's a precedent. It's never happened before. And to what extent can they do that? And the White House is a large house. There are certainly different parts of it where his apartment's located, and they can isolate, physically speaking, at least to a certain extent. But then again, he's got to be interacting with people. You can use the phone or the intercom or what have you, but he still has to talk to people, and they have to be able to see him to talk to him at times and maybe bring him food as well. It's going to be a tough thing to predict right now because we don't know to what extent he's not well, if he's not well, and then how can they quarantine him, physically speaking. The regular folks can be quarantined pretty easily, right? This is different.
Well, that's a good question. And also, Peter, the other issue is we know that Hope Hicks, that is the president's close aide, has tested positive as well. Now, she was at the debate. She was at the debate in Cleveland on Tuesday. We still don't know how many people she came into contact with, how many people the president or Melania came into contact with. So now a massive contact tracing effort begins.
It has to, because they must have been in touch with many people, and those people are in touch with many more people. It's geometric. The spread will be geometric in terms of the contacts, and they have to do it very carefully. And this was at a rally. It was at a debate. It was flying on the airplane with him. It was at a rally in Minnesota, I believe. There were several different events where she was right with him because she's his right-hand woman. She's the woman who's been with him from the beginning, 2016 election, and she advises him every day practically on key issues. So she's not well. From what I hear, she's actually feeling quite sick. Body aches and feeling ill as well. I hope they all recover because we're all human. We want them to be well.
The other problem, Peter, is as well, we still don't know when President Trump first started developing symptoms of this. We know it can take some days before symptoms start developing. So there is that possibility that he could have had COVID-19 at the debate.
It is. We don't know the timeline exactly because, as you said, symptoms are delayed. Quite often it's several days. It could even be a week or two. He could have been asymptomatic and still infected and then given to other people as well. So this is a real problem all around. It's very difficult to get a handle on it, but I'm sure they're going to try their utmost to do so because it's such a critical situation.
What happens to Vice President Mike Pence? Is he now whisked away to a protective area? Where is he likely to be right now?
He must have top security around him to make sure he's protected, that he's available in case he needs to take power eventually, if need be. Hopefully things will stay as they are. There's so much changes going on right in America, as you know, with an election just 5 weeks away. There's so much of destabilizing events, and this could be another one. But they will be making sure the vice president is ready to go if need be. So I'm sure he's taken very good care of and isolated probably right now at this time to be sure that he can be able to take charge. But on the other hand, he's not the one who's been tested positive or anything like that. So we'll have to wait and see.
Let's go through. Donald Trump tweeted, "Tonight, Flotus and I tested positive for COVID-19. We will begin our quarantine and recovery process immediately. We will get through this together." Melania Trump, a short time ago, "As too many Americans have done this year, Flotus and I are quarantining at home after testing positive. We are feeling good and I have postponed all upcoming engagements. Please be sure you are staying safe and we will get through this together." Peter Mathews, what happens now in terms of the campaign? If the president is isolated for, say, 2 weeks, what happens next?
He cannot campaign. So, and he's been campaigning with massive crowds, 35,000 people in airport hangars, were not wearing masks, many of them, and it was just very foolish for him to do that. In fact, he was trying to make it out so that even the West Wing workers, people who work in the West Wing with him, would not wear masks because of it might deflate his image and deflate the projection he's trying to make that everything's going to be fine, the economy is recovering. He wasn't looking at things carefully with reason and science, and that's the problem. It's been very problematic, and that's one reason that's one reason he got infected. He got a positive test. Who would not have expected that with the kind of things he's been doing with thousands of people around him and then not urging them to wear masks? It's not good.
Do you think that this will have an impact on his campaign?
Well, absolutely. At least the next 2 weeks, he'll have to quarantine. He can't go out there and meet his people and thousands of people he's been doing in these different rallies, and that's going to slow things down quite a bit. It's also going to put a lot of uncertainty in the minds of some of the people who are about 7% haven't made up their minds, or so they say in the polls, as to whether they're going to vote for Biden or him. Those 7% this could actually affect them in terms of which way they may swing in their preference.
And given these extraordinary circumstances, could there potentially now be a delay to the election?
Only Congress can do that. No one else can delay the election. The president cannot do that. Only Congress can vote to change the date of the election. And I really doubt that would happen right now at this point, because it's still 5 weeks away. There's still time for him to recover from the quarantine and come out normal and still go back to campaigning. I don't think Congress, certainly the House, will not go along with doing that. Both houses would have to vote for it to change the date. And certainly the Democratic-controlled House would not do that. And I don't think there may not be a need to do it as far as they're concerned, because there's still time for him to recover and still go back to the campaign trail.
What about Joe Biden? Given that we still don't know when exactly President Trump was displaying symptoms, but what would happen now? Do you think that Joe Biden would be forced to take a COVID test himself?
It's possible. I don't think he would mind taking one. I think a lot of people. I think we should have testing massively in this country. That's one of the weaknesses that, according to President Trump's leadership back in February. He didn't urge the whole country to start having massive testing like other countries have done with contact tracing, with quarantining. He downplayed the whole thing and even admitted it publicly and said, "I downplayed it because I don't want to scare people." That was a very foolish direction to take at that time. And so, yes, everyone should be getting tested that can have a test done. We should be manufacturing massive numbers of test kits right away. And I think if Joe Biden's asked to take a test, he probably should take one anyway, just to be sure, because he was out there in the debate. He was talking with no mask on, just certain number of feet away from the president in that debate for an hour and a half, right? And many of the times that Joe Biden's come in touch with people, he's always I've seen him wear a mask usually, but in the debate he wasn't wearing a mask, obviously.
The coronavirus, or Donald Trump's response to it, has been such a central part of the campaigning so far. Even the other day, Donald Trump said that, a vaccine is so close, and he's really been pushing that he wants to get a vaccine before the end of this year. Now he's been diagnosed with coronavirus. What do you think the response in the US will be like to this?
Well, obviously he wants to get that vaccine as fast as possible, but the danger is that, as many scientists have said, you need to make sure that testing the vaccine itself, testing of its efficacy, its safety, its effectiveness has to be done very thoroughly, and it wouldn't be ready to have massive numbers of vaccines in the millions until probably in the April or maybe even June of next year in the summer. But the president thinks he can get it done quickly. He's even predicting it will be done before the end of this year, or maybe even before the election. That's pretty unrealistic, I think. We'll have to wait and see, but I think that that's an unrealistic promise. I think he's hoping to get it done. I think it'll give him a political boost. He's thinking of that. If he does get a vaccine that works, even if it works and hasn't been mass-produced yet, he'll get some boost out of it. He's hoping. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, certainly absolutely extraordinary circumstances here. Peter Mathews, Professor of Politics at Cyprus University. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Take care.
Do stay with us. Coming up after the break, plenty more on the President's diagnosis.